Dear colleagues, good afternoon. We have already more than 25 participants on our first online conference, which is organized by the State Academic University for Humanities. And we are glad to see all of you here on our Zoom science conference. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Denis Fominilov. I am historian and I am a rector of the State Academic University for Humanities. First of all, I'd like to say that a few words about our university. It is an academic university based on the Russian Academy of Sciences, and we prepare specialists and researchers for institutes of Russian Academy of Sciences in social sciences and humanities. And that's why we pay a lot of attention to research in social science and humanities. And all of you are welcome. And let me give our first word to Vyacheslav Sutyrin, prorector of our university and the main organizer and main manager of our online conference. Vyacheslav?
Thank you very much for giving me the word. Hello, dear colleagues. We are very happy to greet you on our conference. This is the first Russian Studies conference which our university organized, and we organized this conference within the framework of our Russian Studies program, which is aimed at giving the knowledge of humanities to our students, and we intend to give over the course of 2-3 months, we intend to give very intensive knowledge of major subjects of Russian studies, which is history, economy, philosophy, Russian language, and etc. And the participants of this program are also here today with us, attend this conference. Russian State Academic University for Humanities is a research university, and we intend to contribute to the development of international academic networks, primarily in the sphere of Russian studies. We would like to serve as a contact point for scholars, students, and experts who share the interests and who would like to involve more in Russian studies. Our university is set up at the basis of Russian Academy of Sciences, so we could give our partners contacts within the system of the Russian Academy of Sciences, and we would like to invite you to extend our cooperation. And what is also important is that we now have I think more than 30 participants of this conference, and we will send you, after the conference, we will send you the information about possible cooperation, how our university could be of assistance if you are interested in developing research into Russian studies. And I would like also to thank the organizers of these conferences, and particularly Alisa Lobova, who made a really big job to make this conference happen. And this is the first experience for our university, and we are really grateful to Alisa for her help. And I'm sure that you already know her because she was in communication with all the participants. And also, I would like to thank your rector for his support and for his interest in international matters and Russian studies. And with this, I will conclude. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Vyacheslav. You know, dear colleagues, that we also organized this conference with support of Institute of World Economy International Relations of Russian Academy of Sciences, but unfortunately Fedor Voitolovsky, director of this very famous Russian research institution, he is ill nowadays just because of coronavirus, and he felt bad, and he asked he told me that it's impossible for him and a little bit difficult to speak and participate in this conference. And of course, he will participate next year if we will make this Russian studies conferences as an online format, as a tradition in future. So that's why he is not with us today. So, dear friends, so we have few sessions today. We have 3 sessions, and we will have conference till the 6 o'clock in Moscow time. And there are many participants here in the program, and I hope that all of you received the full program of the conference. And Alisa, I will ask you also to send this program in chat, just to have for all participants and guests of our conference, not on, because as I see here, we have not only speakers, but we have also guests of our conference who would like to listen and maybe ask questions. And I kindly ask you, all of you, to write your name in chat just to fix that. And I also, I need to say also that we are making a record of our conference, and after that we will prepare some kind of publications in science journals of Russian Academy of Sciences, or in other or maybe prepare special edition as a result of our conference. So, dear colleagues, I'd like to start session number 1, and the title of this section is Russia in Global Affairs. And as you understand, we will speak today about Russia in the world, and about different impacts on Russia or to Russia. And we'll speak also about Russian history and Russian culture, and about policy and economy also. And of course, global affairs is much more important. It's a very important question, and we will start from that. And I kindly ask our speakers to speak not more than 7 minutes. Otherwise, we will not have possibility for questions. And if someone will have questions here, you can write it in chat also, or you can make maybe something with your hand, like me, and we will see that you would like to ask something. So not more than 7 minutes for speech, and in this case, we will have about 2-3 minutes for questions and answers. Well, and the first speaker is Shoaib Khan, professor from University of Mumbai. Shoaib, I am here. If you are here, you can you join us? And using, I don't see you yet. Shoaib Khan, professor from University of Mumbai, with report Russia's intervention in Syria and its relations with Turkey. Alisa?
No.
Is that possible to start microphone himself without our participation?
Yes, of course. He can unmute himself.
Yeah, but I don't see him here. So let's, maybe if he will join us. He will make his report a little bit later. So, and now next one in our program is Manjola Xaferi, professor from University Alexander Moisio Dures. Manjola Xaferi. Okay. Well, as I see, no, is not with us. Next one, Stanislav Prichin, Senior Researcher Fellow, MMO of Russian Academy of Sciences. Stanislav, can you join us? Yeah, so I see you exactly. Yeah, you are well.
I'm here. So,
yeah, I hear you very well. Let's start
great,
from your
great.
report.
Thank you very much. So I also have a presentation. I will try to demonstrate it for the to you to make it more visible. So just let me know if you see my presentation.
Yeah, very well.
Thank you very much.
We see your presentation.
I will try to briefly describe Russian strategy towards Central Asia in the end of last century and in the beginning of this century, 21st century. So from this map, you can see how important Central Asia is for Russia. The first attempts to this region started several centuries ago. During the 19th century, Russia struggled for this region during the Great Game with the United Kingdom. And then during the 20th century, this region was under full control of Russia. It was the part of the Soviet Union. The new page of the history started in 1991 when 5 new independent states got the independence and started to develop their own position on the political map and to choose their own way of independence, sovereignty. So, and of course, it was the period of time of rethinking Russian foreign policy. And first slide is about general Russian periods and stages of Russian foreign policy. The first period of independence of Russia, of course, it was the foreign policy which was oriented mostly on the West countries to establish pragmatic, open, transparent relations with the West. And of course, priority was at this period of time were far from Central Asia. Then during the second period when Evgeny Primakov was the Minister of Foreign Affairs, it was made an attempt to turn the first pivot to the east. But main goals were China and India, not the post-Soviet Union area. And then during the beginning of the first president terms of Vladimir Putin, we could see that the post-Soviet Union countries and Central Asia preliminary became more important goals of Russian foreign policy. And of course, these 20 last years also had different stages. At the beginning, also, Vladimir Putin tried to establish more or less pragmatic relations with the West, and participation in NATO was also under the table, at least on an expert level. But then several cultural revolutions in neighborhood of Russia, worsening relations with the West, and as a result, we had a Munich speech with what was a very important threshold for Russian foreign policy when Russia became to protect its interests in relations with the West, especially in the neighborhood. And 2014 was the most important threshold where after the more or less limited confrontation with the West, we entered the very tough period of full-fledged confrontation between Russia and the West. Regarding to Central Asia and post-Soviet Union area generally, the first years were absolutely passive foreign policy of Russia towards this region because of a lot of crises, political, economical, social crises within Russia. And it was like civilized wars between Russia and its neighbors. But of course, it was painful for both sides. For example, during the first years, for example, newly independent states didn't have their own currency and used Russian rubles as their currency. As a result, any worsening economical situation in Russia affected immediately newly independent states, and so it just showed how it was important to separate economically, politically at this period of time. And Russia, as I mentioned, was very passive during this period of time. Then it was the second period of Russian foreign policy towards the region. And for example, during the first years of his presidency, Vladimir Putin met his colleagues in Central Asia and generally in post-Soviet Union area more frequently and more than Boris Yeltsin during all of his presidency. So, for example, during the first year of his presidency, Vladimir Putin met all 5 leaders of Central Asia, and with some of them, he met several times. It was not a full-fledged pivot to this region, but activization and attention of Russian foreign policy was very visible at this period of time. The second reason I will mention it, I will focus on this more deeply in the next part of my presentation. Of course, it was competition with the West. And the third, from my vision, period more visible of Russian efforts towards Central Asia started since 2011, when we saw the withdrawal of West with their military presence in the region. And at this period of time, Russia restarted its approaches towards integration and more attention to this region. Of course, Russia was not, and Russian approaches toward this region was not isolated from the general processes in the region. And among great powers which have been very active toward this region was, of course, the West and China. The first years of independence of Central Asian countries, China was relatively passive. It was just the beginning of establishing relations between Central Asia and China. But next decade, China became very smoothly and very speedily one of the main investors in the region, and as a preliminarily in energy sector, at this period of time, several important pipelines were constructed which connected Central Asia and its riches, oil and gas riches, with China. And in Central Asia was announced, in Astana was announced the famous Chinese initiatives, One Belt and Road, in September 2013 in Astana, in Nazarbayev University. But last 2 years, we could see a bit slowing of activization of China due to several reasons. Very tense reaction of Central Asian countries towards the rumors about Muslim camps in Xinjiang, the high level of debts, financial debts towards China, and of course, COVID. The third important player is the West, and the West was especially active during the first 10 years of independency. It was the period of time when the West got direct access to this region politically, economically, with a lot of investments, with establishing diplomatic relations. Even NATO searched at this period of time opportunities to develop close relations with regional countries. The second decade was the most successful for the West at this period of time due to anti-terrorist operation in Afghanistan. NATO and the United States got their direct military presence in the region. There were several important objects in Kyrgyzstan, in Uzbekistan, but after the withdrawing of military base from Kyrgyzstan in 2011, early in 2005, NATO lost its base in Uzbekistan. Now presence of the West in the region very limited. Investments also is not so high relatively, especially in comparison with Chinese presence. And politically, of course, the West is not so active now in the region. So if we take a look at the periodization of periods of competition, at the first decade, it was low level of competition between Russia and the West because Russia was weak and no any activities. The second decade, we saw competition between Russia and the West, but at the same time, China drastically increased its influence in the region. And then we could see heightened competition between Russia and China with low influence and presence of the West. Talking about Russian interests and Russian approaches, of course, this is integration initiatives. Russia supports all type of integration, first of all, Commonwealth Independent States Organization, because a lot of agreements within this organization now are working. And especially it's important because not all members and all countries of Central Asia are the partners of Russia within the Eurasian Economic Union, which started its work in 2014. Then, of course, security cooperation on the multilateral basis. First of all, this is the Collective Security Treaty Organization. And of course, Russia is quite active on the bilateral levels with non-participants of the CSTO. Economic cooperation, Russia is one of the biggest trade partners for Central Asia countries. Investments, Russian, quite huge in this region. Of course, labor migration is a very important instrument of influence and economical influence of Russia in the region. And humanitarian initiatives. First of all, Russia is the main market for and main place for studies, especially for higher education for people and young guys from Central Asia, and a lot of programs and activities for citizens from Central Asia now are working in Russia for Central Asian citizens, young Central Asia citizens. So I try to catch up with time. I'm close to end, and if you have any questions, I don't know how we have the common Q&A session or for each of participants.
No. We will have, first of all reports on our panel, number one. And after that, we will have questions maybe from chat or maybe personally here, maybe somebody will ask you questions. Okay. Because first of all, we need to understand how many time we have for questions, okay? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And now, I see that Gunay Haydarli, lecturer from Azerbaijan Academy of Fine Arts, he is here. Yes, and she is here. Gunay, you are welcome. And so, not more than 7 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I am Gunay Haydarli from Academy of Fine Arts. My topic is about Russian-Safavid diplomatic relation. According to Chronicle of Carmelites in Persia, the Safavids and the Papal mission of the 17th and 18th centuries. And let's start. My presentation examines the nature of Safavid-Russian diplomatic relation, probing the conflicts and mutual interests that prompted two states to exchange envoys. And before discussing Safavid-Russian diplomatic relation, let's clarify. What are Carmelite missionaries? Carmelite missionaries were sent by the Catholic Church for spreading the faith or proclaiming the gospel in non-Catholic countries. Shah Abbas, the Safavid ruler, devoted the first 10 years of his reign to strengthening domestic and foreign policy in order to regain Safavid territories taken by the Ottoman Empire. And he sent different series of ambassadors to European courts. Two main issues dominated the message that envoys conveyed. And firstly, to establish a coalition against Ottoman Empire. Second one was is change Silk Road from East-West Road to North-South Road. North Road, it means Caspian Sea. South Road, it means Persian Gulf. And second part of his offer contained not only trade concessions and also privileges for missionaries, merchants, and one of them was, as I said, Carmelites. And Carmelites described political, social, and cultural life of Safavid Empire from its permanent establishment 1610 until its 1753. And these detailed sources was first published in 1939 in London by Herbert Chick. And Russia and Safavid had relations since 1521. And the founder of Safavid state, Shah Ismail, sent first embassy to Tsar Vasily, but it was unsuccessful. We have no information about this embassy, but from this source, it is obvious that Shah Abbas sent no fewer than 15 embassies to Russia or to Moscow. For example, in 1593, the so-called Kaya mission came to Moscow, and in 1592 they had returned from Russia, and Shah Abbas sent another mission, Haji Iskandar. Haji Iskandar was the first official Safavid merchant who came to Russia. And it is interesting that there were some issues, conflicts between two countries. For example, from the sources, we see that in 1599, Anthony Shirley and with his brother Robert Shirley came to Russia. And they were 25 people, and Anthony Shirley persuaded Shah Abbas sent embassy to European courts and for establishing coalition against Ottoman Empire. And in 1599, they chose Caspian Sea as a road because avoiding to pass Ottoman territories, and also they want to test exporting Safavid silk by Caspian Road. And they came to Russia, but they were imprisoned in Moscow because one of the members of embassy, Nikolai de Mello, he was missionary and also Safavid official. He tried to baptize a Russian girl and a baby Russian girl according to Catholic rites, and it created some issues. Nikolai de Mello was killed in Russia, and in 1614, Mikhail Romanov sent embassy to Shah Abbas, and he requested military support and also financial support, but it was unsuccessful. He didn't get any answer. And it is also interesting that from sources from Russian, there are contraries between Russian sources and these missionary sources. For example, the Veselovsky had a 3-volume documentary book about research work about this topic, and he ends Safavid-Russian relation in 1618. Bushev had research about this topic. He ends 1621, but we see from this missionary work that Safavid-Russian relation continued after Shah Abbas' reign. And Shah Abbas' reign. These authors or these researchers ends this relation because in 1621 Shah Abbas expelled Portuguese from the Persian Gulf, and he gave free trade concessions to England East India Company and also Dutch company. And for that reason, he lost his interest to the north. But during the Shah Abbas II, the Russian embassy came to Isfahan. For example, Dakulin came to in 1653, and Dakulin demanded imprisonment Khosrow Khan because Khosrow plundered Russian merchants, and but he didn't give an answer. And we also see from that some issues like cultural issues between the countries. For example, in 1674, during the Shah Sultan Suleiman reign, when Russian embassy came to Safavid capital, to Isfahan, Vasily Kutchukov, he tried to hand credential official to Shah Suleiman, but it was forbidden and as a Safavid custom, and he was expelled from Safavid capital. And in conclusion, I can say that in the early 17th century, if Russia was a remote north country for Safavids, but in the middle of 17th century, they can try, after Andrusova Treaty, they enhanced their relation because Russia needs anti-Ottoman coalition, and he sent embassies, and they asked, for example, 20,000 troops against Ottoman Empire. But during this time, Safavids concluded peace treaty with Ottoman Empire, and they were unwilling to answer, to give positive answer. Thank you for attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gunay. It was very interesting.
Thank you.
Historical retrospective. So, and we will wait, of course, questions for you. And now, Amar Farooq Khan, expert, Eurasian Review. He wrote in chat that he is here. Amar, yeah, you are welcome. Switch on your microphone. Amar, you wrote in chat that next presentation is yours, and you are online, and yeah, Amar, switch on your microphone, please. You can do that yourself. Omar Farooq Khan, you are welcome. Alisa, can you help? Yeah, okay, it's okay. We can hear you. Can we see you? Can you, yeah, can you use video camera also? Hello. You're right in chat. You wrote in chat that you can't hear. Can you speak? No. There are some. Tell us something, please. Yeah, I see you. You are welcome. Do you hear us? No. There are some problems with connection. I write you in chat, read in chat. Unfortunately, we have some problems with connection with Amar, so we will maybe come back a little bit later. I will write in chat some comments and suggestions also. Maybe restart computer and rejoin us again and check your internet or your Wi-Fi, and unfortunately, so Amar, we will ask you join us a little bit later. Do you hear us now? No. Do you hear me? No. Okay. So, and now we have other speakers, two speakers, Gianmarco Riva and Zanata Leonardo from University of Bologna.
Yes, and then Nicola Mellere as well.
Who will make report?
I will share the presentation, then I will leave the floor to the first colleague of mine, so Nicola Mellere, who will start speaking.
Okay, Nicola Mellere, you are welcome. You will start and show us your presentation. And all of you have just 7 minutes, please. Okay?
Yes.
Well.
Wait.
Okay, so I can start.
Yeah, you can start. We're waiting.
Yeah, it seems that the presentation won't opening, so maybe we can start, and then I will try to open later on.
Okay.
Okay. So our paper is dedicated to the case of Armenia, the regional integration in the post-Soviet space with a particular focus on Armenia. I will I will present the first part of our paper, which is about the historical background and the reasons why Armenia is so connected with Russia. And I will start with mentioning the beginning of the Armenian of the Russian Armenia. So the first event that led to the annexation of Armenia to Russia, which is the Russia-Persian War in the beginning of the 19th century. From that time, Armenia passed from the Persian Empire to Russia, and for the next 2 centuries almost was part of the Russian Empire at the beginning, and then of the Soviet Union. In the 20th century, Armenians fought along with the Russians in the World War I. And after the end of the first war conflict, the first Armenian Republic was proclaimed, but it lasted not very long, as it was later incorporated, as I mentioned before, to the Soviet Union, and remained part of it until the 1991, until the collapse of the Soviet Union. During the Soviet times, Armenian movements wanted the independence, but the issue of Armenian independence was every time connected to the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh. Nagorno-Karabakh was a territory that is reivindicated by Azerbaijan and Armenia, and the issue of Armenian independence was linked with the recognition of Nagorno-Karabakh as a part of the territory of Armenia. Not by chance, the major movement for the independence of Armenia was called Nagorno movement. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Armenia regained independence, but the political situation was always characterized by the conflict that arose just after independence with Azerbaijan for the control of this reivindicated territory between Yerevan and Baku. For this reason, Armenia wanted independence from Moscow, but at the same time wanted to have Russia as a very strict ally, because the security of Armenia was guaranteed by Moscow, and it cannot be unbound from a strict alliance with Russia. For this reason, Armenia joined immediately the post-Soviet organization of regional cooperation, namely the Commonwealth of Independent States, the CSTO, the Collective Treaty of Security Organization, and inaugurated a strict economic cooperation with Moscow, also because many factors favored it, as the huge emigration of Armenians in Russia, which gave also was of very huge economic importance for the maintaining of the and development of the Armenian economy, which is not very big and is rather weak, and also from a cultural factor, namely the fact that Russia was always seen by Armenians as a country where Armenians could live peacefully in opposition to the Ottoman Empire or the Persian Empire, where Muslim religion was in conflict with the Armenian Christianity. I will give my floor to my colleague Gianmarco Riva, who will speak about the more recent events that characterize the development of Armenian foreign policy between the Western direction and the continuity, namely the cooperation and the strict alliance with Russia.
Thank you, Nicola. Do you hear me, everyone?
Yeah. Excellent.
Okay, perfect. So as Nicola already introduced, I will focus the attention on the relationship between EU and Armenia, starting from 2013 up until nowadays. And during this period, we can see that generally in 2013, the relation started with Armenia concluding an association agreement with the EU and the deep and comprehensive free trade agreements. But at the same year, surprisingly, the President Sargsyan made clear his intention to join the Russian-led Custom Union, which later became the Eurasian Economic Union. And this momentum signified the relationship EU-Armenia as a political deadlock. And so to identify what reasons characterize the Armenia U-turn to abandon the EU leadership towards the Eurasian Economic Unions, different analysts and the literature around the topic tends to categorize the reasons along three main categories. So the first one is a shift in Russian foreign policy, especially in aftermath of the EU-BEIC association agreement. The second reason is an endogenous factor and relates to the democratic decline happening within the country of Armenia. And the third one is a failure of Western engagement. So consideration of a lack of successful by the EU in approaching Armenia. Specifically, one of the main reasons which brought to the failure of Armenia return to the Russian Economic Union is the country vulnerability to possible coercive measures by Moscow. Indeed, Russia exerts a considerable influence on Armenia because of different reasons. We can just think about, for example, the security relations. In this sense, Russia is the main security provider, but also unsecurity provider. In the first sense, this is explained by the fact that Russia has a strong military cooperation with Armenia, but at the same time, it does engage with Azerbaijan in selling arms and weapons. A second main reason relates to the energy sector. In fact, Russia is one of the main energy suppliers of Armenia. And in this sense, surprisingly, before Armenia approached the EU, Russia decided to cut and increase by at least 50% the price of gas, which was motivated by a kind of attempt to influence, coerce Armenia. And indeed, after Armenia decided to leave the partnership with the EU, the gas price was resumed. So after a period of uncertainty, later on in 2015, EU decided to resume the dialogue with Armenia and promoted new partnership and cooperation agreements through the principle of differentiation to address specifically the needs of the country and not goes with one-size-fits-all approach. And this resulted in 2017 with a deep and comprehensive enhanced partnership agreement, which was concluded and was reviewed upon the consultation of the European neighboring policy. And now I think I will stop here because the time is ripe, and I will leave the floor to Leonardo, which will deal with the last part of the presentation.
Yeah, I just ask Leonardo not more than 2 minutes, please.
Yeah, I will try to be as short as possible. So good morning, fellow colleagues. Thank you so much for the invitation and for the possibility to speak at this conference. So I will try to be to resume which are the main points of, let's say, Armenian foreign policy, and to demonstrate how they're extremely linked with Russia and the prerogatives of Russia towards the post-Soviet space strategy. So let's say that the main points of Armenian current foreign policy could be like the strengthening the country's external security, in the sense that, of course, as we well know, like 2 borders on 5 of the Armenian Republic are closed because of the already aforementioned issue about the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict and the relations between Armenia and Turkey, which of course rely on the Armenian genocide issue. The second, of course, concerns maintaining external favorable conditions for development of the country, which at the same time means an extreme interest in the position and the protection of the interests of Armenian citizens abroad. As we well know, like the majority of Armenian ethnic population doesn't live in Armenia, and most of the economy of Armenia also relies on the remittances of Armenian migrants, which is a really important issue. And for sure, all these points are definitely linked with Russia, with Russian politics, because as we well know, Russia has a well-defined position, in the resolution on the committee, which is trying with the participation of OSCE, to resolve the issue of Karabakh issue. At the same time, Russia and Armenia share the participation in several organizations. We mentioned before the CSTO, which is very important, the Eurasian Economic Union, of course, the CSI, the Custom Union, and so on and so forth. And we can understand, firstly, from the fact that most of the remittances from the Armenian migrants come from Russia. And secondly, that since Russia owns the majority of infrastructure in Armenia, especially energy infrastructure, the economics, facts, issues, developments of Armenia are increasingly related to the Russian ones. And a demonstration of this is the crisis in Ukraine in 2014, when the valuation of ruble also took to the valuation of the Armenian dram. Anyway, why the relationship, and I will try to conclude on this way in order to be as short as possible, why the relationship between Armenia and Russia can be somehow be an issue of controversies, because among the post-Soviet countries, Armenia is definitely one of the most which has tightened the most its economic and political ties with Russia, and for sure the most reliant one on Russia, at least in the Caucasus region. The first point why this couldn't be just considered a special relationship, but an issue of foremost importance in Russian foreign policy is that, of course, Russia is worried somehow about the possibility of Armenia, for example, for diversifying its energy imports, especially natural gas imports. Also because Armenia shares the border with another important energy actor, such as Iran. There is also a pipeline connecting Iran and Armenia, but as we know, Gazprom Armenia owns at least the rights of exploitation of this pipeline.
Leonardo, few words, please.
Conclusion. And finally, also and I will conclude the relations also on the Karabakh issue. As far as we know, Russia has been also selling weapons, both to Armenia as a loan, and to Azerbaijan, which is far spending, like from 2017, $5 billion in tanks, artillery equipments, and so on and so forth. This is why, just to conclude, this relationship has like both sides, which has like have just been explained. Thank you so much, and sorry for.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very, I can say, well done, colleagues. 3 reporters in one speech. It is very effective. And I can say that Manjola Xaferi joined our conference and ready to participate with report. Manjola, you're welcome. Come on. No, we don't hear you. You need to switch on your microphone. Yeah, no, switch on again.
Okay.
Yeah. Well done.
Hello.
You're welcome.
Hello, my name is Manjola Xaferi. I come from Albania. I'm lecturer at University Alexander Moisiouduros. First of all, thank you for this opportunity to be part in this conference. For me, it's a very pleasure to be here with you. My paper titled Albanian Diplomatic Relation with the Soviet Union between 1949-1916. In fact, in this theme, I address is one of the most important periods in the history, national and international politics of the Albanian states, which coincides with the close political and states cooperation of Albania with the Soviet Union. In the center of the study is the way to do foreign policy in dictatorship with the superpower from which we have been completely dependent. This is also the most important topic, and in function of it whom this paper is written. The purpose of this paper is to highlight the phenomenon, actors and factors that determined the main features of relation between Albania and the Soviet Union in period 49-16. The purpose of this paper is to analyze the first feature of the relationship between a small and weak country with the superpower in the internal and external context. Second, ideological divergence in bilateral relation. Third, individual cult of leadership in both countries against the background of the progress between the two countries for the benefit of Albania relation with the Soviet Union in recent years. 5, dependence on economic relation between Albania and the Soviet Union. 6, the reason that lead of the breakdown of relation between the two countries. And 7, Yugoslavs and the main point of division. In fact, maybe it could be the attempt to demonstrate of the attempt to clarify something in this relation, which has had a lot of light and shutdown. Based on document and data, the facts show that economic relations were very valuable for Albania. Albania has taken a place in the international arena thanks to the contribution of the Soviet Union. Is a very important this. And C, without the support of the Soviet Union, we were a bankrupt country as the emergent for the friendship with Yugoslavia. The question is, why did all this happen? Probably because of the Albanian geographical position. The construction of the Pashaliman military naval based on the of the Soviet leadership. Sorry, but I have the emotions. leadership with the buy of Vlora was the indication of this. However, it must be said that after the breakdown of relation with Albania, the Soviets fled in country without much fuss, even though 10 years in the proclamated in Albanian, and that we were quite covered by the Soviet because of geostrategic goals. The reasons for the split are multiple. The return of the Soviet Yugoslavs relation played a very important role in the progress of relation between Albania and the Soviet Union, but we cannot say with conviction that Albania and the Soviet Union would have maintained friendship in this relation had not been recovered. Or if Albania had not lined up in favor of China. But even this line in the paper I have seen in the light of the return of Soviet Union relation with Yugoslavia. Because just when she felt threatened by this return, Albania turned a blind eye to China, and vice versa, China found that their call belittled support in Eastern Europe. Considering that Enver Hoxha wanted to install the Stalinist regime in the country and then keep Italy for as long as possibility. A very important element in the structure of the paper is study hypothesis, which is presented in function of the research question. This study offers three hypotheses that raise the key problem. In all its paragraphs, this study tries to show the veracity of this hypothesis. The first main hypothesis of the paper is the Soviet Union did not have that geopolitical or economic interest in Albania, as was thought at the time. The Soviet Union's rapprochement with Albania come mainly due to the breakdown of relation between the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia and Albania with the latter. Without economic and political support, Albania found in the Soviet Union the economic it needed to fill the vacuum created by the break up with Yugoslavia. The second hypothesis of the paper is Albania's relation with the Soviet Union never come out of the tutelage of dependence and preferences. Although with some ideological context, Albania's relation with the Soviet Union reflected the relation of power, and for these reasons they were always dominated by pressure, blackmail, on the one hand, the humility and the obedience on the other. The third hypothesis in relation to the Yugoslavs, Albania has never been a priority for the Soviet Union. In any case, it would have to be treated depending on the ups and downs of Union Soviets and Yugoslavia relation. This did not change under Stalin or Khrushchev. In conclusions, the analysis led by a diachronic and analytic approach of the practice, behaviors and attitudes of both parties showed that this relation have not followed a straightforward development curve. They have their ups and downs, and changing interest and strategies due to these developments. The analysis showed that this relation developed normally as long as the interest of the two parties involved meet each other's expectation and did not affect the realization of their projects. From the analysis of the whole time frame, when the Albanian-Soviet relation took place in emergence, that we can divide this relation into two stages. The first, the Albanian-Soviet relation with the development of the Albanian-Yugoslav relation, and the second, their Albanian-Soviet relation during the sorry, but I have officializations. In the first stage, the Albanian-Soviet relations were hidden from the Soviet foreign policy itself and its goals in the international area. In the second stage, the Albanian-Soviet relations during years, in these years we have in relation come as the result of the loss of Soviet influence in Yugoslavia. The Soviets see Albania as a very suitable place in the Balkans to turn it into its most loyal satellite. This is my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Manjola. Thank you that you joined us. And as I told in the beginning, that we will have questions in the end of our first panel from our first session. Okay, so we will wait questions in chat, or maybe some people would like to switch on. Okay, thank you very much.
But I have
so
birthday
be in
today.
connection, please. Be in connection, please, and maybe there we will have some questions. And now I see here Dr. Shoaib Khan, our first speaker, Professor Shoaib Khan from University of Mumbai. Can you switch on microphone? Yeah, I see that you did that. So yeah. We can hear you. Excellent. No.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes.
Hello.
I can hear you. No.
Yeah.
Don't switch off. Just switch on your microphone. Yeah. And now speak, please.
It's on.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to participate in your event. And without wasting any time, the title of my presentation is Russia's Intervention in Syria and its Relations with Turkey. The Armed Campaign. It was on 30th September 2015, a new chapter opened in international relations, and which was a turning point in the world politics. Russia began its campaign in Syria. It began the airstrikes by Russian Air Force jets against militant groups opposed to Syrian government, including Al-Nusra Front, the ISIS, and the Army of Conquest. The Russian Air Force had significant ground support from the Syrian military, Iranian Revolutionary Guards, and allied militias. Russia's concerns about this war was about that the US and other third parties' security assistance to Syrian opposition groups for broader US-led coalition military operations, and the presence of extremists of Russian and Central Asian origin also may have been motivating factor for this Russian action. Russia's goals in Syria and beyond. It was for decades that Syria has been one of Russia's main allies in the Middle East. The disintegration of the Soviet Union did not change anything in this regard. Moscow continued to support Damascus with whatever necessary to keep the old empire's last balcony on the warm waters of Mediterranean Sea. Russia and Iran worked together closely on unifying efforts to combat terrorism in Syria, yet each side still worked their own way to achieve goals. Putin would retain the leverage to promote an alternative in exchange for maintaining in Syria the only Russian military base outside the former Soviet Union. Russian strategy apparently calls for helping Assad against control over a rump state running from Aleppo. the former commercial capital near the northern border with Turkey, south through the key urban centers of Hama and Homs, to Damascus and the border with Lebanon. Putin is winning friends in the region. He developed relations with Egypt's counter-revolutionary autocrat General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and with the Iraqi government. Iraq and Egypt are two states which were regarded as being part of the United States sphere of influence. And yet both supported the Russian intervention and are now developing military and strategic relations with Moscow. Relations with Turkey. Turkey and Russia enjoyed a strong relationship, but those relations have soured because of deep differences over Syria and stalling of a pipeline project to carry Russian gas to Turkey. Analyst Darim Yailali spoke to Al Monitor about the significance of Russian naval assets in the Eastern Mediterranean, pointing to several factors that cannot be ignored. Turkey and Russia, who share a multi-billion-dollar economic relationship that is quickly deteriorated due to geopolitical disagreements over Syria, Ankara's new foreign policy activism has been particularly visible in the Middle East, where Turkey has sought ties with its Muslim neighbors, especially Iran and Syria. Relations with Russia have improved as well, especially in the economic field, and Ankara has recently sought to mend fences with Armenia, another long-term adversary. These developments have raised serious questions about Turkey's long-term foreign orientations. Moscow-Ankara in new dimensions of international politics. Turkey's purchase of the S-400 missile system from Russia has arrived amidst the most significant crisis in the history of United States-Turkey relations. Beyond Syria, Erdogan also sees Russia as a useful counterweight to relations with the West. Following the July 2016 failed coup attempt, Russian President Putin extended his support to Erdogan and has not questioned the Turkish government's crackdown on journalists and political opponents. In the conclusion, I will say that some factors led to major improvements in Turkish-Russian ties, but irritants remains. Both leaders will likely maintain a level of distrust, especially on issues tied to Syria. Russia's refusal to label PYD or PKK as terrorists while pressing for inclusion of PYD representatives at Syrian peace talks will play into tensions. Erdogan's irritation over Washington's continued support to the YPG is anchored at European governments' attitude on Turkey, and Russia's key role in Syria crisis may push Ankara to preserve and potentially expand positive ties with Moscow. And one of the examples we have seen, the troika emerging between Russia, Turkey, and Iran, again, in the Syrian matters. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for your speech. And so you were in time, very well, thank you. We will wait also questions in chat for you, or maybe personal questions in the end of our session. And now I kindly ask to connect Amair Farouk Khan. Amair Farouk had some problems with internet connection. And Amair, can you join us now? Oh my, yeah. Yes. No. Do you hear me? Amair, don't you hear us? No. No, you don't hear us. Here? No. I see. Okay, some problems again with internet connection. Mayer, can you speak, or maybe we will hear you. So Mayer tries to start presentation. No. Yeah, I can see that, but I don't hear you. can you speak? Amair, can you say something? No. Unfortunately, it's, as for me, I don't hear you. I can see your presentation, but I can't hear you. So maybe you will use, yeah. Yeah, Amair, we have suggestion from Gianmarco Riva. You can switch off video, and maybe after that you will have better internet connection, and we will listen you without video, because video plus audio, there are problems for that. You can't hear us. Switch off your video, please. Switch off your video and make your presentation without your video. No? So we can see that in global world we have real problems with internet connection yet, and all of us, all our states should work for that. Well, so sorry, Amair, if you can't hear us and you can't speak, I need to call other presentation. Alisa, Amair, can you try without video? Yeah. Yeah, tell us something. No, we can't hear you. Sorry, Alisa. So unfortunately, we have internet connection, bad internet connection, and I need to ask other speakers. So, Dao Nguyen, Charles University. I don't see you here in.
Okay, can you see me?
Yeah, exactly. Very well.
Okay.
Dao, you are welcome. You have good internet connection, as I see, and we can hear you, and we can see you. So, and you will have 7 minutes for your report, please. You are welcome.
Okay, thank you so much. I will share my screen. Okay.
Yeah.
So can you see the topic? Yeah.
Yeah, we can see that. Excellent.
Okay. So my topic is about the return of geopolitics in Eurasia, and it's about the transformation of foreign policy of like 3 great power in Eurasia: Russia, the EU, and also China. And also, like, I will talk about the implication for the regional integration during 2013 and 2019. Okay, so first of all, I will give you about like the overview about the geopolitics. So as for the definition, geopolitics studies the impact of geographic factors, location, resources, population, or topography on the behavior of entities in the international relation, especially the behavior of the nation. And since 2013, after the Cold War, like many scholars believe that geopolitics would be like disappear from international relation, as we care about international church or international organization such as like the United Nations or WTO. But it turns out like the geopolitics have made an U-turn. So we can see like the crisis, the Ukraine crisis, or the start of the Belarus initiative of China, or even like lately in 2019, the president of the European Commission has declared that the EU Commission will be a geopolitical commission. So it makes me so in this presentation, I will mainly talk about like the Markinder heartland theory, which is like cover like you can see in the map, and like beside it, like geopolitics has a great impact on policy. Foreign policy making, as we can see in the past, like the Canaan preventive war or Harry Kissinger triangle diplomacy, and it is also the starting point of the foreign policy should be based on the practice that have to produce and maintain the sovereign identities. So that's why. So this is the main part of my presentation, as I have a really short time. So the nature of the geopolitics of the triangle between Russia, the EU, and China. So it's both cooperative and competitive, but it seems like the competitive side will be the dominant. And also the main benefit is Eurasia, Central Asia, and also Western Balkans. So as for the first one, I will talk about the Russia foreign policy. So geography has shaped like Russian identity, and also the understanding of Putin in terms of security. And they have, and Russia has the three main geopolitical spaces, which are Eurasia, Euro-Atlantic, and also Asia-Pacific. As for the Euro-Atlantic, so it's a main benefit between the EU and NATO, such as like you can see the Ukraine or Georgia. Also for the Asia-Pacific, it is a new pivot in Putin policy, and it has overlap with China. And also Eurasia is overlapping in location between Russia, China, and the EU. And also like the EU, like also Russia, like nowadays currently see the EU as a geopolitical rivalry, but in the post-Soviet space. But yet, like we cannot like the cooperation part between like economic and humanitarian aspect. And also Moscow and Beijing has established the strategic partnership as a counterweight to the US and EU alliance. So what about the EU foreign policy? So the EU has been like approached like a more geopolitical approach. So you can see like it has started like this union like established a global strategy for the European foreign and security policy. And also like traditionally, although this union like refuse and deny like any type of geopolitical interest, but like it has been like occupies a certain like geographical space and also seek to export the values and norm, and it's called the normative values, and it's called like many scholars call this the soft politics. And like in 2018, like the EU published like the EU Asia connectivity strategy. So it's like it is the effort of the EU not to engage with BRE Barrel Initiative, and also counter the influence of China in non-EU countries of the Western Balkans, and also increase its geopolitical relevance at the global level. And as for the Russia, so the EU promotes the wider Europe and it clashes with the Russia Greater Europe, and it's also strengthened the EU partnership to expand the West control geopolitics space to the east. And as for the China foreign policy, so BRE is the key. The BRE is a part of the like China hidden geopolitical strategy. Many scholars believe that, and it aims to extending its sphere of influence and also foster the new norms of international economic cooperation, and also like promoting a new world order. And Europe is considered as the final destination of BRE, so it undermines the influence of Europe in CE and also neighborhood. And Italy is the first country in G7 side BRE. And BRE also seen as the main vehicle to push for wider Euro-Asia integration and saving Chinese geopolitical and geoeconomic interests. So it's a potential threat for EU and Russia. And so I will talk about, so you can see like there's an interrelation between like three countries, and it's very complicated geopolitical battlefields. So what will be like the implication for the regional integration for like in general for the Eurasia, and particularly for the Central Europe, which is the main battlefield between the EU, China, and Russia. So Eurasia is a class symbol or the joint mapping. So for this reason, so today it is designated to like the process of the economic cooperation, and this economic cooperation is the core, aspect. And also like it also engage like socio political or regulatory and normative exchange between like different countries, different neighboring countries that span like Northern Europe from eastern borders to the EU and to Asia Pacific. So how about like three country process, and also like try to foster the regional integration in this region. So first of all, Russia is a leader for the regional integration, and it is skeptical about the EU strategy and also China new mega project with this BRE. And it also presents their ambition to go beyond the existing level of post-Soviet integration by building a Eurasia Union, and it will become one of the poles in the modern world and serve as a bridge between the Europe and also Asia-Pacific region. As for China, so it executes the hedging strategy between the EU and Russia, and it will focus on energy and economic cooperation without really touching on governance and democracy. As for the EU, it is initially it's not a key partner, but it's trying to expand its influence. So it will continue to promote normative power, also non-buildings, and also resists the relation between Russia, and so strongly prefer to deal with EU members on a bilateral basis. So countries will have similar values with the EU will consider as its neighbor. So it is a reference of my presentation. So thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dao. So, and we are waiting questions for you also in chat or later in the end of our session. And now I kindly ask Marina Nunes Bernardes.
Hi, I'm
Marina,
here.
yeah, I see. Yeah, fine.
Hi.
You are welcome. And you have microphone for your report. 7 or maybe 8 minutes because we have enough time. You're welcome.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm Marina. I'm a master's degree student from Brazil, and I study Russian foreign policy. And this paper, my research now is about Slavophilism, a school of thought that has origins in the 19th century in Russia. It defends that Russia should stop idolizing Europe and stop trying to be part of the European continent, because for them, it really isn't European nor Asian. They believe Russia is a bridge between these two civilizations. So the research objective is to understand how this cultural and philosophical school of thought influenced the creation of nationalist lines in IR and in foreign policy in the government. And also how and which of its characteristics are still part of the modern political nationalism, which I think is a very important subject to study nowadays because of the nationalism growth in the whole world. So the Slavophilism started in the Russian elite as a movement to stopping try to be part of Europe, which was happening for over a century since Peter the Great's government and openness to Europe. It values Russian identity, Russian Orthodox Church language, and also the Slav people. This isn't a common ground for all Slavophilists, but is one of the most important characteristics is that they consider the Slav people to be one people, not that should be one big country. One of some examples of Slavophiles in the 19th century is Dostoevsky, Komiakov, and the Kiribsky brothers. It's important to say that they weren't anti-Europe. They recognized that the continent had entered a profound moral crisis and that the Russian values had to be rescued because it was essential for their country. They were also against the cult of property and profit that the West defunded. So in IR, the IR in Russia was developed after the Second World War with the increased bilateral and multilateral relations with other countries. And it was structured to give more importance to subjects and practical issues instead of theoretical issues, because it was structured to have close ties with the government. It has a very practical purpose. But it can't be said, according to Marina Lebedeva, that any scientific knowledge was created in the Soviet Union period because the Marxist-Leninist paradigm was the only one they could research. So the IR, Russian IR really developed after the end of the Soviet Union. And then there was a search for incorporating nationalist ideas in the research program, which transformed into Eurasianism that contained Slavophilism and the Derzhavnik. So those were the two school of thoughts that had really nationalist ideas that evolved from the Slavophilism school of thought. And I can't get into it profoundly because of the time, but then I'll submit my paper explaining it. About the nationalism translated in foreign policy. In the Soviet years, the foreign policy was basic a cooptation of ideological allies, and so the Slavophilism was repressed, and the national ideas was used selectively for the government's purpose for gaining the people's support. And according to Kushins and Zevelev, with the end of the Soviet Union, three strands of foreign policy emerged. The pro-West, that defended a reform of Russia's political system basing it on the West system, the great power balances, that defended multilateral foreign policy separated from the domestic sphere, and the nationalists, that defended the Russian special mission in IR, and Russians had a special mission in IR, and mainly defended the better relations with its neighbors. Some politicians even defended the reintegration with the post-Soviet space. So, and this nationalist trend can be divided in three groups: the neo-imperialists, that is the sphere of influence defenders, and the ethnic nationalists. The neo-imperialists defended that Russia should reclaim the USSR great power, and it's mainly composed by the Communist Party. The second one favors regional political domination, and the last one aimed to unify all Russian communities, including Belarus, Ukraine, Kazakhstan. In the Yeltsin-Kozyrev years, they had almost no power, no space in the political dialogue because of the liberal orientation of the government. But after 1993 until 2003, the nationalist ideas began to gain a little bit more power, and the great power balance orientation started to grow also with Primakov. In the Putin-Medvedev era, there was expressive change in foreign policy, and the nationalist ideas really began to show with more force in this period. To conclude, the impact of the Slavophilism school of thought and the nationalist ideas it generates in the present can be seen on the government policymaking after the Russo-Georgian War, because the idea of Slav people's reunion can be seen in various actions by the government, like the annexation of Crimea, and it was expanded to include every ethnic Russian speakers of the Russian language and a descendant of a group that was at one point part of Russia's territory in its history. It can be seen very explicitly in the foreign policy concepts and national security concepts. And my research is about mapping and explaining how these concepts grew in the political dialogue and now are part of official documents of the government to legitimate various aggressive actions by the government. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Marina. Okay, questions we will have later, okay? So stay with us, please. And now Alana Carla Montera Leal Rego, State University of Paraíba, and Mariana de Oliveira Rodriguez, Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul. Maybe I don't speak Spanish, and that's Portuguese, and that's why it's a little bit.
Portuguese. It's Portuguese.
Sorry, it's Portuguese. So it's a little bit. Excuse me, please. I pronounced my own Russian English way. So you are welcome.
That's fine.
Yeah, welcome. And who will make the main report? Mariana de Oliveira. You will have the main microphone, and Alana Carla Montero. Where is she?
Alana could not join us today, so it's just me.
Okay, very well. So you have 7 minutes, please.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Just 1 sec, I'm going to share my screen with you.
Yeah, it's going on, but yeah, I as for me personally, I can see that.
Okay, I think it's there for everyone now.
Excellent.
So thank you in the first place for accept us. And I am Mariana Rodriguez from the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul in the south of Brazil. I am finishing my master in international security studies, and my research focus is on contemporary geopolitics and security. And I'm here to present this paper that I'm working on with my colleague Elena, who could join us. And our focus in this research is the classical geopolitics amid the new navigable front of the Arctic Ocean and the strategic routes for Russia and China. So our objective with this paper is to investigate the possibility of reinterpretation of the classical theories of geopolitics. And by this, I mean the opposition land versus sea power. And amid this new scenario of the ice melting of the Arctic Ocean, which opens new navigable pathways and new possible conflict spots for the near countries like Russia and China that are our objectives of study. And as a hypothesis, we point out that the classical theories never predicted the ice melting of the Arctic Ocean and always perceive it more as a natural shield than as a navigable pathway, and not considering it as a strategic region. So we point out also that the Arctic defrosting opens up new strategic routes for other countries besides Russia and China, like Canada and United States, emerging a new conflict spot due to their different interests around this new opportunity. To lead this research, we divide our paper structure in 3 sections. And in the first one, we go through a theoretical discussion of the classical geopolitics approach. And the second one, we present the lacks of this classical theories over the Arctic space importance. And in the third one, we investigate how Russia and China are facing these new scenarios and readjusting their politics. So some highlights of our first section about the classical geopolitics. We bring up the debate of the historical opposition, the land power versus sea power. And we bring up some points of the main authors, Halford Mackinder in the land power, who wrote down the heartland theory, which points out to land supremacy and highlights the Russian isolation that was seen as a great condition for security because of their natural shields like Arctic Ocean, that was always shown as an intransponsible spot. And we bring up also the opposition, the Alfred Mahan theory of sea power, that is a opposition to the idea of land isolation and shows the importance of the sea for security and economic growth. And here, just to illustrate, I bring up a map that was created by the propositions of Halford Mackinder, and it presents all the strategic spots around the pivot area, the heartland area that was the Eurasia landmass. And it brings all the strategic spots and the outer crescent, the insular crescent that corresponds to the seas also. But even in the sea terrace, the Arctic Ocean is not seen as a strategic spot. It's just the ICC as an intransponable shield. So based on that, we present the lacks of the classical theories, because both of them, even in the debate, the opposition of the one to another, both theories had not given the Arctic Ocean much importance. Even the sea power that shows us the importance of maritime and naval development did not consider the Arctic Ocean as a navigable pathway. And even later, with the hybrid theories of Nicholas Beckmann, Zbigniew Brzezinski, that considered the amphibian powers, did not see the Arctic Ocean as a strategic option, because none of them have ever predicted the ice melting of the Arctic Ocean. And this turns Arctic Ocean of a shield into a strategic route and increases the regional disputes that changes all the predictors of conflict spots and all the geopolitics in contemporary times. And in some highlight of our third section presents some of Russian and Chinese interests in the Arctic. And in the Russian side, we can see some interest that goes around energy resources exploration, mainly oil and gas, and the opening of new commercial routes that also increases some security threats that leads to military emulation to improve the security, mainly against the other Arctic states that are NATO members, for example. And in the Chinese side, we see the interest of cooperation with the Arctic states, despite not being an Arctic state. It's due to their interest in energy and resources exploration, and also because the Arctic space is very important to the Chinese development of the Polar Silk Route. There is a huge Chinese project, and also this cooperation between China and Russia helps in the commercial war against the US. So we see that the opening, the ice melting of the Arctic that opens new pathways, new strategic routes, alter all the regional dynamics and all the geopolitics of the world powers. And as preliminary result, we point out that it's not possible to apply the classical theories of geopolitics to these new conditions, because they alter the power dynamics predicted by its authors in the 19th century, losing central points in their argument. And due to that, Russia and China are readjusting itself to this new scenario in order to gain some collective advantages in the increasing of the disputes for the Arctic control. And due to that, the ice melting of the Arctic can be seen as a watershed in the contemporary geopolitics, because it changes all the classical prediction. And that's pretty much that, our research. And I thank you all for the attention.
Mm-hmm. Well, is that all?
Yeah, is it all?
Yeah, thank you, Mariana. So, and we will try again with Amar Farooq Khan. Amar, come on. Let's try again to connect with us without video. We are ready just to hear you. Amar, tell us something. You can switch off video. Switch off your video, please, just with audio. Yeah, tell us something. No, sorry. No, but I kindly ask you to send us your presentation, and maybe an article with your report, and in a book which we think just we will publish a book about, by the materials of our conference, and we will publish your report, and all of us will read it. So sorry, but internet is poor, and that's why it's impossible to hear you. And it was our last speaker, and we have about half an hour for questions to our reporters. And there was a question from Robert Cutler. There, in the beginning of our conference, Robert Cutler wrote in chat that he would like to ask Stanislav Pritchin. Stanislav Pritchin is here and ready to answer for this question. What about Robert? Robert?
I'm here.
Yeah, I see you.
You can hear me.
Yeah, your question, please. Your
Very
question.
good, thank you. I'll state the question, and then for common reference, I will paste it into the group chat. Yes, my question, Stanislav, it's good to meet you. And my question is the following. Regarding the energy sector in Central Asia and the Caspian Sea region, the present period is characterized not only by a general decline of Western diplomatic presence, but also by a withdrawal of Western capital through decisions not to pursue investment, also the sale of stakes by Western companies in existing projects. This situation is accompanied by a higher profile Chinese presence, which has been increasing for years, and which may increase still further if, for example, Chinese companies purchase the stakes in major projects being sold by Western companies. Some observers suggest that this increasing Chinese financial, industrial, and geopolitical presence is not always welcomed by Russia. Please say, in your view, all other things being equal, would Russia welcome greater geo-economic and energy sector Western presence in the Caspian Sea region today, not to oppose Russian influence, but rather to restrain and counterbalance the Chinese strategic influence in the region and the countries there?
Thank you very much for your question, Robert. It's very interesting, but at the same time, it's a little bit puzzled because it's too complicated picture which you described from my perspective. Of course, in the first decade, it was the period when Western companies preliminarily came to the region. The main roads from the Caspian Sea region, Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan, Baku-Tbilisi-Erzurum, were constructed at this period of time. So the full-fledged Western flank and Western roads for transportation oil and gas from the region to the West was constructed at this period of time. Then we saw the same picture, but from the east side, which was sponsored and initiated by China. But now, from my perspective, I can see that we have more or less a balanced situation. So reserves in the region, a little bit, it's huge reserves, but it's not so huge for further fighting for its and geopolitically, first of all. And for example, it would be interesting to develop the reserves of the south part of the Caspian Sea, especially on the border between Azerbaijan and Iran. But decision of Trump to withdraw from the nuclear deal with Iran changed all plans. And regarding to your question about Russian position, of course, when China came, especially to Turkmenistan, it was welcomed by Russia because it guarantees Russia that Turkmen gas wouldn't be supplied finally to the European Union market. But Trans-Caspian pipeline, the only way to do it, from my perspective, this is absolutely fantastic project, especially today when we have so low price for oil and gas, and geopolitically, technically, financially, it's very, very low opportunity for this project. So at the same time, for China, there is no so many opportunities and free reserves in the east flank of the Caspian Sea. So in Turkmenistan, China is #1 investor and #1 supplier. In Kazakhstan, China controls 20% of production, but China is not going to increase its share because there is a political tension, a political unwelcomed approaches of Kazakh society, and at the same time, Western companies and Kashagan and Tengiz, they are not welcome to Chinese companies. So now, at this period of time, we can see a little bit balanced situation where all players have the shares when without visible attempts or will to increase its influence in the region through expansion, through developing new projects. So situation geopolitically more or less stable from my perspective. Thank you very much for your question.
Well, so Robert was the first with his question. He wrote in chat, first of all, and I'd like to be the
for the
second.
common reference.
You would like also to make comment?
No, just I'll put the chat there, put it in chat so that everybody could look at the question while Stanislav was answering.
It's written. Thank you, Robert, very much that you printed that in chat, your question. So I didn't find other questions in chat. So, and I'd like, as a moderator, to ask Mariana de Oliveira from Brazil. The matter is that Arctic is extremely cold region and with bad life condition. And as we know about Brazil, Brazil is a hot, very, very nice place to live with green everywhere, every season, with nice agriculture and warm seasides and so on. So for Russians and Russia, Brazil looks like the state of dream. Anytime you can swim in the sea and eat fresh fruits and so on. And why do you study Arctic region? What for? For Brazil, for example, is that important region for Brazil and interesting for your government? And do you have special grants or financial support to research Arctic Ocean and Arctic region? And why did you study that?
Okay. First of all, thanks for the compliment. I say very, very happy about it. And why the Arctic? First, because I, as a master's student that studies geopolitics and contemporary geopolitics, I am in a master program that has a lot of investments to study all the contemporary modifications about these new conditions that are presented mainly about the climate changes. So I think the Arctic is a curious point for us to comprehend, because we see that the climate change is affecting the Arctic, and is really interesting to see how those powers that are for a long time had ignored for the Arctic for strategic interest. And it's interesting to see how the climate change makes it more like a issue for these countries that are near the Arctic, and how it turns to be a matter of strategic and military economic growth and stuff. I think it's like for that.
Okay, well, thank you. Dear colleagues, Yeah, I see that Gianmarco Riva
has a question.
Yeah, Gianmarco have a question for Mariana. Gianmarco, you are welcome.
Thank you. I appreciated your presentation,
Yeah.
Mariana, especially because I'm interested in international relations theory. And I would ask you, like, I found out that you mentioned like the land power and sea power theory, but without taking into account the neo-realist stopping power theory by Mearsheimer, according to which like the global hegemony is impeded by the presence of water, which impede the regional actor to become an hegemon. So in your perspective, do you think that the melting of the ice in the Arctic would represent like a new battlefield for like a neighboring country, in the sense that a new emerging power will have the capacity to project their power over an area which has been so far untouched?
Okay, thanks, Gianmarco, for your question. I think the ice melting of the Arctic, it changes the balance of power, because for Russia mainly, it was always seen as a land power that was able to battle just on the land. And the ice melting of the Arctic opens a new pathway to gain an amphibian power. So it changes, it alters all the predictions we had before, because we always see that opposition, that Russia and the Eurasian states were the land power, and the US, the occidental part, were the sea powers. But with the ice melting of the Arctic, we had an untouched battlefield that allows to this land powers to gain an amphibian power, and it changes all the predictions we had before for the land power authors and all the international relations theories or international security theories that emerge from that.
Okay. Thank you, Mariana. Gianmarco, is that okay for you, or you need more questions?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, dear colleagues, I think that we should give the last chance to Amar Farooq Khan. He restarted his device, and he will try to make his report, Resurgence of Pakistan-Russia Relations and New Geopolitical and Geoeconomic Opportunities for Russia. Amar, let's try again. Amar, no. Switch on your microphone. Yeah. Tell us something, we will try to hear. No. Sorry, so we will wait to hear in Russia with your personal report after coronavirus and pandemic and so on. So excuse us, but just because of internet connection, nothing personal. And we will wait your article. Dear colleagues, unfortunately, Amar can't join us. And do you have more questions for our speakers? I don't see questions here in chat. Come on, I'm waiting. If you have question, you just push the hand in the Zoom here, for example, as I did it just few seconds ago. You can see here in chat, and where you can see the list of participants, you can push up your hands. No? So I don't see any hands. I don't see something in chat, but so Vyacheslav, do you have any questions as a organizer of the conference.
Well, just thank you for the opportunity. I just would not prefer to interrupt with the discussion because this is specific. There were specific presentations and discussion, and if there are no questions, maybe some comments of the colleagues we also welcome. And if we conclude now, if there is no comments or additional questions, I would like just to mention that there are almost 40 participants now, and I think our next session starts at 15:20, 20 minutes past 3. So we'll have then a break, and then we start according to the agenda at 15:20 for the session on history and culture. But this is only if there are no questions and comments now, because we.
Okay. So